All right. Hello and welcome to Hello Governor, the podcast. As always, I am Abdullah, and my guest today is Bill Millsap. Is that how you pronounce
Yeah,
your
it's
last
Bill
name?
Millsap. Yeah.
Four L's. That's amazing. Four
Yes,
L's.
yes, yes. I'm an onomatopoeia. That's me, Bill Millsap.
So, first question is the obvious one. How did you get started? Like, what made you want to get into voiceover?
You know what? I used to mimic cartoons when I was a kid. And my parents would actually get on my case about it. They'd be like, "Stop doing the baby talk things." Here I am, trying to do my best impressions of Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd and those types of things. And then as I got older, I ended up getting a tape recorder that you could actually record your voice on. And me and my friends, we would play and we would record our voices, but sometimes we would read comic books and be different characters in the comic books. And I just enjoyed that part of it. And I always knew that that was something that I wanted to explore when I got into acting. I got into acting when I was 16. And by the time I left college, I had, you know, become a theater major and a film minor and done a lot of different performances and a lot of different productions. And I'd also done 4 years of radio while I was at the college. So I knew that I wanted to get into it. So I found somebody who was teaching classes that was legitimate, because there's a lot of classes out there that claim that they can help you and give you a demo and everything else, and they're kind of cash grabs. So you got to look for the people who are really legitimate in terms of finding the best teachers. And I found a woman who was from the old Hanna-Barbera days with Yogi Bear and those types of things, and she had been teaching classes for a while. Her name was Dolores Deal, and I took every single class that she possibly could throw at me. And that's how I got my start, was just learning behind the mic and taking classes with the right teachers. And I continued to build friendships through those classes. Those are the people that you rise through the ranks with, and I'm still friends with those people today. Voiceover is kind of an isolating um, uh, profession, because you're inside your little booth, and that's all you do is you spend your time in your booth and you send out auditions, and sometimes you don't get any feedback at all. You're just constantly there. So having those friendships from those classes, you can sort of check in with people and make sure they're doing okay and ask for their opinion, and sometimes they'll coach you when you're doing your auditions. And it's just a big community that we all became a part of. And from there, I just kept rising through the ranks. Ended up directing for the first time at a brilliant place called The Voice Caster, which is a voiceover casting agency. And I was directing people's auditions. They would come into the booth, and I would direct them on their auditions for a specific client. And I was doing that for 7 years. And then I reached out to Bang Zoom Entertainment, who had been casting me in a few anime series, and let him know that I wanted to switch over into more narrative directing rather than audition directing. And they gave me a chance on a video game. And I did really well on that video game and directing it. And then they gave me, following the footsteps of Tony Oliver, who's a very big anime director and actor. They gave him the first 4 episodes of a season of anime, and then they gave me the next couple of episodes, testing me out. And when they realized I was good, they gave me the rest of the season. That was for The Honor at Magic High. And then from there, they just kept giving me new seasons to direct, and I kept doing that. And then as I'm directing, I'm learning more about my acting, and I'm rising through the ranks that way. So it's just been a progression over many, 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 many years. I left a money job, oh gosh, in 2013. I worked in entertainment law as a legal assistant, just trying to make sure that I had food on the table for a long time. I spent 13 years there while also continuing to do voiceover and on camera and all of these other things, and left in 2013 to do voiceover full time. And it's been a rocky road, but now I'm making a full living at directing and acting and voiceover. So it's definitely an uphill climb.
So, directing was something like you walked into. It wasn't something you were pursuing. It was just something you were like, hey, let's do it on
You
the
know,
side.
I always wanted to direct feature films. Directing was something that I always loved doing, because to me, directing is, if I'm acting, I am the puppet that gets to be manipulated by the other director to do wonderful things, and I get to feel wonderful emotions, and I get to bring my performance to the screen, and that's beautiful. But when I'm the director, I get to play with everybody else's instrument, which is a lovely sort of symphony of being able to put together a story. And more than an actor, I believe that I'm a storyteller. I prefer directing. In fact, I make 80% of my living directing and 20% of my living acting. And I like it that way because this way I get to work with actors, I get to know people more in the industry, I get to see how people attack things differently. It helps my acting, it elevates my understanding of acting and specific projects and background stories for things just by watching other people do something that would be a completely different choice than what I would make. And I enjoy the acting side of it because that keeps me fresh and, make sure that I'm not getting too caught up in my head because I'm listening to the input of other directors and constantly being in front of new people. It's really lovely.
And as a director, how do you get the best performance out of your actors?
Intention is everything. So if I read the script and the intention is that this person has lost their father and is enraged at the world for it, but is still also feeling the sting of pain of all of that, those are the layers of emotion that I'm going to ask for in that specific line. And sometimes your emotion will change mid sentence and I'll ask, start out here and end here. Give yourself somewhere to go. Um, Sometimes it's as simple as I love where you're going, go deeper, feel more. Sometimes it is uh changing the direction of a specific place because they thought it was supposed to go one way, but they're only giving me one emotion. It's rare when human beings ever feel one emotion at a time. So being able to say, that was great, I love that. Now add a layer of this on top of it, or add a little bit more of this on top of it. Feel this more, and then give them the justification for it in the story so that they understand how they're feeling because of the storyline and it gives them somewhere to go. The other thing that I do is I always do lead ins. So that way they have something to respond to. So they're not just acting in a void. So I'll act opposite of them if we haven't recorded prior lines from prior characters. Or if we do have those lines recorded, I'll ask them to play them in with the prior character so they can respond honestly. And then you get honest responses within the game.
And when you're working with someone who is new to, let's say, anime dubbing, how do you make sure that you build a level of trust so they can, so you can get the best performance out of them, and also like guide them through something that they're not familiar with?
Number one, remind them it's supposed to be fun. Take away all of the performance anxiety out of it and say, a lot of times, one of my biggest directions is that was great. Now have more fun with it. Do a take that you think is great. Just go for it. And sometimes those takes are the best ones and we end up using those. Sometimes I have to give them the rhythm of the timing for anime because there's specific flaps that we want to match within the existing animation. Because in anime, we cannot at all change the animation at all. So trying to make it look like it was made for English so you don't get those errant flaps that make you draw out of the storyline. I'll rewrite things on the fly to have the same intention, but making sure that it matches flaps. And then sometimes I will monotone so they don't mimic my performance, what that line is and what the timing of it is. And I'll be like, that's just timing. Give me all your highs and lows, all your emotional stuff, but it has to be that timing. And so that's what they'll do. I've taken actors who'd never acted before, ever, 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 ever in Game of Thrones King's Road. But because, I mean, there was a gentleman who came in, and I swear to God, this guy was 6'7". We had to literally, the roof was almost of the booth was almost touching his head, but his voice was so low, and we had him playing um, a wildling that is one of the Thens, which are the Nordic cannibalistic wildlings from Game of Thrones, and At first he got into it and then he was saying the lines, but then I was be like, have more fun, feel in it. And I would energize myself so that he would get more energized into it. And I'm putting into him and he's putting back into me. And we're playing, we're getting bigger. And I'll go, oh no, even bigger, even bigger. And we keep rising and rising and the energy keeps rising. And the next thing you know, you've got a brilliant performance and it syncs up. And then he gets to see what it looks like instantaneously. And the beautiful thing about anime is that you get instant gratification because when you see it working and it works like the animation shines, I always say look for the eye shine because if the eyes shine, then you know that that performance is working for that moment. I also have another note that is if you make me laugh, it stays as long as it fits. If you make me laugh, it's my laugh test. So,
And when you're brought in to direct, let's say like a season two of a show, because you yeah, we can I think it's fair to say that you are we can say that you're the director for the English dub of season two of Sakamoto Days, and when you're
mhm.
brought in to work on something that's already been done, do you watch the show beforehand to get a good feeling of where of what the tone is, or do you usually go in
Absolutely.
blind?
No, I never go in blind. Number one, I need to know where the characters are going. I need to know where the characters have been. I need to know what their motivations are because knowing that, being informed on that, helps me drop um, character traits that are typical of that character. And also, by watching everything beforehand, I know what the intentions are supposed to be, where they end up, what happens with them. Sometimes I get a chance to watch the entire season beforehand, so I'll know that there's an Easter egg coming up that I can plant a little something in a performance a little bit earlier. So, all of those things help inform the story, help elevate the story, and it helps make it more relatable too. Because if I can see sometimes characters are very they operate within a small emotional range. They're very even keel and they have small moments of exhilaration and small moments of sadness, but they never go beyond a certain point. And to work within that microcosm, you've got to be able to feel into those moments and go, okay, well, I know that because they said that this portion of their life was this way, this is the reason for their even keel. But now that they get a chance to indulge in the thing that they really want to do, we can go a little bit above that. We can go a little bit beyond that. We can get deeper into their enthusiasm for that moment while also still operating within that small range. It gives us a chance to give more uh, humanity to these characters, and it also makes them more relatable. Because I have found that sometimes other dubs that I've watched in the past, uh, they're focused on the directors seem to be focused on making sure that the intensity in terms of the volume of what's happening is correct and that the speed and the timing is correct, but not the emotion. And that flattens out a lot of performances. And I want the emotion to be there too. I will have takes that it matches perfectly, but I'll be like, okay, let's go deeper. You've got the timing. Now let's act deeper. Let's get into this a little bit more. And I'm sorry that I'm being so vague. It's just that literally it's sentence to sentence each direction. When I'm directing Game of Thrones King's Road, which is the full open world game of Game of Thrones in the style of like Diablo 4 and God of War, where you have subquests and main quests and it's all tied together. I'm dealing with some characters that literally have only one line, but you're in the middle of an area of the map of Westeros where there's famine and hardship and plague. And so you want to make sure that each and every one of these supplemental characters that they may interact with have that feeling, that weight of things are desperate, things are bad. Because that way, that emotion, hearing it out of people's voices, makes you understand the tension of the area, the danger of the area. And so it literally is line by line, character by character, one at a time. And it literally is like a million course meal where you take a single bite of each course and make sure that it all layers in so that it makes a grand tapestry of emotion and immersibility. One of the things that I learned about animation working in it so long is that the animation itself is beautiful and it's glorious, but you relate to everything because of the emotion of the actor and the vocal actor. You look at Pixar and you have moments where you see eyes get wider or smaller, but it's the catch of breath that really pulls you in. Or it's a music cue that pulls you in. Okay? It's a shiver, it's a moment, and it's those sound cues that humanize the thing that's hand drawn. So making sure that those moments are pure in a video game is or in anime or in animation is really important to me. Um, an example would be I was working with Bryce Papenbrook, and he and I were working on the anime Zom 100. And his character in Zom 100 was a character who always felt like he was on the outskirts of life. And when the zombie apocalypse comes, he thinks it's great because now he can get back at all of the quote unquote normies. He can unleash these zombies and put them in places, and anybody who looked down on him, they can get their comeuppance by being turned into zombies themselves. What he always wanted, though, was acceptance. And because you have that layer when it comes to this grand finale with his character, we were able to dig really, really deep into a very, very, very emotional moment where Bryce would literally record it and then he'll come back out and he'll be like watching the scene with me and he's like, no, we can do better. We can get a little deeper. I'm like, good, because I felt that way too. And he would go back in and we would re record that moment so that we got it specifically. And some of it was so quiet. It was just a simple, simple breath that was a release. And just that small moment gave life to that specific moment and it made it heartbreaking. So yeah, delving into intention and character and giving the actors where they should go and what the setup is so they have and can feel the emotion of truly of those moments, making it honest. That's the most important thing to me.
And when you're acting and being directed, do you ever think of like, well, if I was directing this, I would do a totally different. I would
You know what? There are times, but I also realize that my vision is not perfect. My vision is my vision. It's my way of telling a story. And so when I'm directed by somebody else, I may not be able to see because I can only see my portion of it, how it's going to work. So my job as an actor is to slip into the role and go exactly the direction that the director wants me to because just like when I'm directing, they can see the whole picture. I can only see this small area. And so sometimes I'll get directed in another way that I'm like, oh, I didn't think of that. But I don't question it. I just go with it because the director can see more of the tableau and I can only see the one character. So I will always, it's not my place to redirect ever. I can offer suggestions. What do you think of this? But I'm always going to ask for their input because they see the full picture.
And how did you take to dubbing? Was it easy or was it hard?
It's scary to start. I'm always nervous when I start a project just because I don't want to fail the project. In fact, I want to elevate the project so much that I put a lot of pressure on myself. I make sure that I watch the episodes. I lean into the characters. I find out things. In fact, just recently, while I was directing Sakamoto Days, I was directing a new character in a very specific direction. And then when I found out because I only get certain number of episodes at a time. I had the first 3 episodes and then I was working on the fourth episode and I saw where he ended up. I was like, no, this doesn't work. And so I literally, since we had enough time, went back and re-recorded that character's lines for the previous 2 episodes and brought his character to a completely different space because it was more important to me for the story to be fluid and have all of the true emotions work for the character as they go along rather than just have it be done. It was more important for that. In fact, there was a second character that we thought we were in the zone based on what we were shown within the first season. And then the casting director came in and said, we're going to re record every single one of his lines because we haven't found that sweet spot yet. And just like I said, this character works within this zone, but we needed to make sure that his intentions were clear. She sat in on the session and we re recorded 3 full episodes for this one character. And that to me is brilliant because to me, I grew up on anime. I grew up on anime dub. And dub is important to me because I love anime, but even the Japanese language sometimes doesn't match their lip flaps. They don't care as much, and I find that when I'm reading subtitles, I'll miss some of the animation. I'll miss some of it because my eyes are scanning the thing, and I'll miss some of the glory of the animation. So being able to do a dub where you can match it as specifically as possible to the actual created animation so it looks like it was made for English with all of the emotion and all the flavors that go along with it, you can just immerse yourself into the animation and get the whole experience too. I love watching things in Japanese. I also love rewatching them in English for all of the cues and animation moments that I missed prior. Um, I had a film that I had to direct called Suzume by Makoto Shinkai. And I was in charge of directing the English dub for that. And we only had, I believe it was a grand total of 14 days to get the entire film done. And so we worked really hard on it. We worked like 5 days, took one day off, and then ran the rest of the 9 days straight, working weekends and everything else to get it done. And what was important to me was to capture the purity of the emotion because Makoto Shinkai, who did Your Name and Weathering with You, his his films are at the level of like Miyazaki films. You don't mess those up. And the other thing was this film was being shown in IMAX. So for it to not match lip flap and for you to be pulled out because you're watching on the biggest possible screen, that to me I had to be incredibly specific to make sure that it was brilliant and pure and all the intentions were clean and that I did not deviate away from Makoto Shinkai's emotional landscape of what he had created. And I was so proud of what we had accomplished. Um, he even came over and he thanked me afterwards, which was a great, great honor.
Speaking of that movie, Josh Keaton was the lead in that, and I'm kind of wondering, like, what was it
Yes.
like working with him? Because he usually doesn't do a lot
Josh
of
is a
anime.
buddy now. He and I just got each other instantly. Josh is a buddy. He and I actually may go shoot archery this weekend. He's a really really gracious, wonderful dude. He's a brilliant father. He's just a hangout kind of guy, but he also just gets it. You know, there were things that I didn't have to do. Like he would start, because he's playing this man who has been converted into this three-legged chair. Well, he's got to be running, right? So we're recording and he's pumping his arms to make it sound like he's running. Oh man, this body can really move. And I was like, I never had to ask him to pump his arms. He just knew to go there. And so we would dig because he was such a knowledgeable actor about where to dig into emotion. I would have him dig in even deeper. Because when you the biggest challenge with anime, especially on Suzume, was we only had a limited number of minutes to record. We had just that amount of time to get this done. But when you have an actor that locks in that quickly, you can dig deeper into the nuance of the moments. And he was brilliant that way. Um, I am so proud of what he accomplished on Suzume, and I can't wait to work with him more. It's delightful. Um, yeah, I love Josh. Josh is great.
And out of all the actors you've worked with, was there ever someone who blew you away by performance?
Oh, absolutely. Um, you know, I'm not going to label one performance, but I am going to label the fact that being a nerd who grew up on anime, I have now directed the people that I grew up listening to. To me, that is so mind blowing that I have directed every single one of the lead people and supporting characters in the movie Akira. Okay. I have, Cam Clark and just so many people that I've had a chance to work with. And it's funny because I'll work with other directors and they're the people that make me nervous. Like I was directing JB Blanc for Game of Thrones King's Road. He's plays a very significant emotional character in the very beginning of the actual storyline. And this is a guy who, directed Diablo 4, but and is also Vander in frickin' Arcane, and all these different characters, and just working with him, I'm like, he knows this world so well, and he directs so well. So when you're directing somebody who's that specific emotionally, I'm like, don't drop the ball. Don't drop the ball. Don't drop the ball. And he gave me brilliance on Game of Thrones King's Road. Very, very, very fun working with him. Yeah, just working with some of the greats is always fun, especially when like Susie Young, just a dream to work with. And she and I have worked on 5 projects now. She was in uh, Engage Kiss. She was in Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed, which was another video game that I directed the vocal performances for. She was in, uh, apologies, Kakaguri Twin. And, she plays Makima in Chainsaw Man. And she just has this internal timing and this patois and her way to get in and use her instrument so well that she conveys emotion so quickly and so easily. It just rips on through. And another one who was really, really brilliant at that was Billy Kometz. And I worked with Billy on Tokyo 24th Ward. And it was during Tokyo 24th Ward that he got his diagnosis, and unfortunately, he passed away just a few months after. And so we actually had to replace his voice with Alejandro Saab halfway through the season. And it just so happened that it happened at a seasonal break, and Alejandro can mimic what Billy had been doing. But when you're dealing with anime dubbing, it's very important to get a certain number of lines, loops done within an hour. And usually if you're dealing with somebody who's kind of new, it's right around 24. You start getting into people who really know what they're doing, you're dealing with 30 to 34. When you get into the people who've been doing it a long time, like Susie Young and Matt Mercer and Billy, you start getting into the 40s. And this is brand new stuff. This is not a character that he even knew before. And we did in the very first episode, which is a double episode. So, episode 1 of Tokyo 24th Ward is literally an hour long. Um, he had to do all this running and jumping and outrunning a train and all this other stuff. And here he is flying through it on one take, just flying on through. And it's gorgeous, and I literally am just shaking my head going, there's nothing I want to change on this. And so we'd spend some of the extra time just jawing about what he did, and the fact that he had musical theater background. He played Aladdin in the Aladdin musical at California Adventure for a long time. Billy was just a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant talent, and taken from us far too soon. And it broke my heart when he passed. And it was funny that I made new friends at our celebration of life that Bang Zoom did for him, and we're still close to this day. But yeah, Billy Kometz, man, wow, really, really cool.
And I also want to mention another character you played was I forgot his name from JoJo. It's
Oh, Prosciutto,
Prosciutto,
yes, one of
yeah.
the Hitman crew. Who's there with his sidekick who throws fish hooks, yeah, and calls him a mamone. Yes, yes, prosciutto. That was probably about the third time that I worked with Tony Oliver. Tony Oliver was the director of that series at the time for that one, which I believe was Golden Wind. Yeah, Golden Wind was the season. And this was right before the pandemic hit, I believe. And he and I were wearing masks, and we'd sit down and chat about anime and chat about direction. And it was Tony who first told me about how conventions work. And for those of you who don't know, Tony Oliver, long, long time ago, we're talking golden age of anime, there was the Macross saga, known as Robotech, right there at 1981, 82, 83. And he was the lead of the entire show. So for me to work with Tony, knowing that he was Rick in Robotech, was a huge, huge honor for me. And then, of course, for him to be the director of The Honor of Magic High for the first 4 episodes and be sort of my mentor when I started jumping into directing the other episodes was brilliant. But he and I would just sit there and chat, and working with Tony on Stone Ocean, on no, not Stone Ocean, Golden Wind was great, because what ended up happening later on was I ended up directing, because there was such a quick turnaround time. I ended up co-directing a few episodes of Golden Wind with Tony. So he would be directing certain actors in one area, and I'd be directing other actors in another area, and we were getting those done on a specific time to just get this out the door as quickly as possible. So the fact that I got a chance to turn around and not only be in JoJo's but to direct JoJo's was quite the blast.
That must have been a lot of fun because that's a very over the top show, and everyone has to give
Mm-hmm.
bring the go 100 in that
I got a
show.
chance to direct Tiana Camacho for all of her stuff for like the first 3 episodes. So, and she's a blast to work with. So,
And and when when you're working with people and it's like an over the top show, how do you like make sure that you get an over the top performance, but also make sure that they're safe and they don't damage their voices while doing
mm-hmm.
stuff like that?
Well, we save, yeah, yeah. So, first off, we save the vocally stressful stuff to the ending of the session. Always. So, an example would be Billy has to outrun a train, jump on the top of it, jump in front of the train, and scoop a girl out in front of a train while screaming his bloody lungs out. Okay. We did that at the very end of a session, going around that section. We're not doing it in order just because we know that section's coming. We need to make sure that we go around it, get all of the stuff beforehand, and then that's the last thing we do during a day so that they can go ahead and rest their vocals afterwards. Uh, Number two, anime is amplified emotion. That's what anime is. It's the reason why you get the or the ah or the squee. All these things, these emotions, they're honest, but they're big. And so when you have these moments, you get a chance to listen to the Japanese original as a timing element beforehand to know what projection is and those types of things. And then you get to play your own stuff. So not only do you get a chance to feed off of what the original Japanese is, I can build you up and I'll be like bigger, and I'll work just like bringing my own tension into it. And or if it's a quiet moment and it's very emotional, I'll bring my direction down and talk to them about that. All of these big emotional moments have to be honest while also being big and over the top. I work with Kaylee Mills, and her voice is perfect for that kind of stuff. And so she does all of these big, high pitch, beautiful characters that are sort of bubbly and crazy. And she was Kisara in Engage Kiss. And there were these huge moments, and then there were these quiet moments. And you just have to know to bring your energy to a specific place with those actors so they feed off of you while also feeding off of the original. That's the way I direct. So I get exhausted by the end time I'm done directing. I direct for 7 hours and I'm like, oh, nap time.
I was about to ask, like, after a long day's work, do you still watch anime? Because whenever I ask people who direct anime, they're like, I don't want to watch any more anime after spending an ungodly amount of hours
I
working on
watch
anime.
anime because I enjoy anime, but I also like to see what other people are doing in the space. It's good to be informed. So, did I watch all of Demon Slayer in English? Yes, I did. Did I watch all of Chainsaw Man, adapted and directed by a friend of mine, Mike McFarland, all in English? Yes, I did. I watch things that are popular. Sometimes I'm not a fan of the show, so I'll stop after a couple of episodes, but I at least give it 3 episodes before I shut it down. There are certain animes that just didn't appeal to me for one reason or another that everybody else thinks is amazing, but I'm like, I need to know what these animes are like because they're popular. I need to know what people are enjoying. I need to see what other directors are doing with their anime and how they're doing it. Sometimes I'll see things and I can tell that the directors are just getting it done so it has an English dub and they're not putting as much effort into it as I would. And then there's other people that I'm like, wow, those were really really good choices, and I'm just astonished by what they were able to pull off. So I am like I watched all of what was the big one that I binged recently? Oh, well,
Solo
that's
leveling, solo
Solo
leveling.
Leveling. Why am I freaking out? I finished it a while ago. That's the reason why I did. And I even directed a couple of days on the video game because the video game is also considered canon, and it was done at the exact same time as the anime was. In fact, it's beyond the anime in terms of storyline. So if you start playing the video game, that's really cool too. But yeah, Solo Leveling I went through. I've been watching the new My Hero Vigilantes episodes. I'm kind of on the fence about that. I've been searching for new things, and sometimes I go to older things that I haven't seen because I went a long time without watching anime. So there's huge gaps in the 90s and 2000s that I haven't seen at all. So sometimes I'll go back and I'll be like, "Ooh, what's going on here?" And I'll watch the Japanese originals. Just because I haven't had a chance to see some of the things. Like I had never seen any of Makoto Shinkai's work, so I watched both English and Japanese versions of Your Name and Weathering with You to see what the directors had done for the English dub, but also to see what his original intentions were before I even jumped into Suzume. So yeah, I watch shows all the time. It's one of the ways I unwind. I don't play a lot of video games. I'll play for a few hours just to get a feel for things, and I end up buying games that I never finish. I think I've only finished two games in the last 10 years, and both of those were The Last of Us and The Last of Us Two. Um, but I got to stay up with what's going on in the business. So I'll play, buy the games and play for 2 days, 3 days, see what's out there.
And speaking of video games, let's just talk about the thing that most people are probably listening to this for. Marvel Rivals. How did you get involved in
Mm.
that? And was Punisher the only character you auditioned for?
Oh no, I auditioned for a bunch of different characters, but I love the Punisher. The Punisher. I first became aware of the Punisher in the Marvel universe because I was a big Marvel universe kid. A long, long time ago when I was only what was I? I was 10 years old. And a friend of mine told me about there's this cool character by the name of Wolverine. You got to see him. It's really cool. I'm like, all right. So I go over to the local Circle K where they had a rack filled with comic books, and there was X-Men Uncanny X-Men 173. And for those people who know X-Men, that's a very seminal issue. It is the issue that Rogue comes into the X-Men. It shows her following Wolverine, who's on the front with both claws popped out. It is also the episode that the Wolverine movie was made off of because it's also the Silver Samurai warrior battle between him and Wolverine. So I was a big, big nut when it came to that. And right there at the 80s, the Punisher was introduced in a 4-issue miniseries. I didn't get a chance to read the miniseries, but I'd heard about it. So when the first issue of the actual series came out, because he was just a miniseries, he was only a 4-part miniseries, four issue miniseries first. Then they said this is the first issue of the entire ongoing series. That's when I picked it up and I started reading about Frank Castle. So I had a lot of background on Frank Castle when I first saw uh, the actual sides, and I was so excited for him. So excited for him. I auditioned for Wolverine. I auditioned for Magneto. I auditioned for Hulk. I auditioned for Groot. There was a lot of things that I auditioned for, but I got the Punisher. And what was really interesting was um, the guys at Bright Skull, the team at Bright Skull. They're just brilliant, and they brought me in, and I got cast as the Punisher in another Marvel game that they had also been directing, and they had decided not to include the Punisher in that game, and that game ended up getting released and it was done, and that was it. But this one, Rivals, was their big flagship one that they were going to launch. And so I ended up being cast again off of that first game as the Punisher. And then I was the first person they recorded. And it was really funny because the team, I believe it was a Japanese team that was also working on it as well, uh, were very curious as to why the Punisher's emotions were only within this level. Shouldn't he be bigger or more this? And they're like, he's the Punisher. And when you get to Spider-Man and Penny and those types of things, it will be those. But for the Punisher, he's kind of this guy, so we have to stay there. And I'm continuing to record for him because every time they include brand new characters that you can play opposite against, I have interactions with them. And I love being the Punisher. I think it's brilliant. I love the fact that I hear from people that whenever they hear Judge, Jury, Executioner, that they get scared because they have to wonder where in the map I am so that they're not nearby. I love that. I love that people are afraid of me.
And what are some of your favorite lines?
um, I really like Judge, Jury, Executioner. That's one of my Judge, Jury, Executioner. That is the basis of it. But I really like it when he's in the mode of when he's interacting with people not in map, but outside of map, where he can actually have some emotional dialogues with Magneto or Penny or Spider-Man or those types of things. Those moments are the moments that I live for because those are the ones where you get deeper into who Frank Castle is and how he feels individually about each person he's interacting with.
And speaking of those interactions, which one would you say was the most fun to record?
Well, the one that I've said before is Penny. You have to understand that two things about Frank Castle. Frank Castle lost his family due to a gangland shooting that happened directly in front of him. And from that point on, he decided that he was going to go out and cleanse the world of organized crime. And he was going to do it in his most violent fashion so that they would never hurt anybody ever again. Penny lost her father. Her father died, and she took over the mech suit that is the spider mech suit. So Penny's right around the age of what his daughter would be. And so when they're interacting, he's like, "Where'd you get the mech?" And she's like, "Well, my dad made it for me." And you get to play with the emotion of, "Oh, she's lost her family. I've lost my family. She's doing what she's doing because of what happened to her father. I'm doing what I'm doing because of what happened to my family." And so there's a fractured moment of genuine unease at feeling those emotions that comes out of the Punisher. It's very subtle. It's very underneath it all. When you go into the mat and when you go in and you do your interactions with Penny inside the selections room, you'll hear that there's like just some hesitation in there because it's digging a little too close to home. Everybody else he can be brash with. He can look at Magneto and says, "Don't move, I'm watching you." And he's like, "Well, I've disengaged all of your weaponry. There's nothing you can do." What the? All of that works because you're just fencing and posturing and ego stroking with other characters. The one with Penny is personal.
And what aspects of Frank's character do you personally relate to?
The fact that we all, at one point in our lives, have wanted to wreak vengeance due to being wronged, perceived wronged in some way, shape, or form. There's been a time where you've been either in school and the bully was able to one up you and push you to the ground and you felt humiliated and you dreamt up all the ways that you wanted to take that bully out, or the fact that you were in the wrong place at the wrong time and because of it you had to go through and be punished for all of this stuff. And punished meaning, scolded and grounded, whatever else, and you just, you're chewing on it. I wish I could. And all of those moments we all relate to. And so the fact that he is that personified and actually inflicting that pain and that justice is very cathartic. Very cathartic. We all wish we could just go nuts in some way, shape, or form and exact our own personal justice. Not that that would be correct, but that it would be so emotionally fulfilling to do. And being able to do that in a video game and just feel that and unleash is glorious. Cathartic.
And seeing as you're a big Punisher fan, are there any like specific skins or costumes do you want to see added to the game?
I don't know. Somebody was asking me the other day if there was another character that could be added that would be, people who play Rivals know, there are certain characters that if you team up with them, it actually increases your damage capabilities and your defensive capabilities. Like if you team up Punisher with Rocket, you're going to see a lot of firepower being utilized. It's pretty crazy when you do that. And they were like, well, who do you see? Who would you like to see as another character in Rival that would be a great foil slash accessory to making him more powerful? And I thought, they don't have War Machine in there yet. That would be great to see War Machine and Punisher go at it, either opposing or on the same team. I think it would be really interesting to do that. Um, Thinking of other, skins are interesting because skins are personal. Um, I'm usually go for a default. My favorite one is the one where he's got the skull painted on his face as well as on his chest. That's my favorite because it's that whole war paint aspect of it. It's very Mad Max Fury Road. That's my favorite just because I find it intimidating. But you're always looking at him from the back, so you don't get to see that often. So it's more about the gameplay than anything else. And I keep thinking, who else do I want to see from Marvel show up in here? Um, I don't. Last time I checked, Ant Man isn't a part of things, and I think that would be very interesting. Because if you're minimizing yourself and then trying to cross the map and it's changing perspectives and you're jumping into people's suits and doing all sorts of crazy things, I think that would be brilliant too. But that'd be adding such a huge element to the game of miniaturizing and getting larger. And I mean, you wouldn't be able to get much larger. You'd be able to stomp people on a map. There's just so many avenues that Marvel Rivals can go, and I'm just a real happy to be a part of it. It's just a delightful game to play.
Because I want the classic Punisher, the white boots and the white gloves. I mean, come on, give me the classic
Mm.
Punisher. I miss that. It's like I miss the goofy like superhero-esque Punisher before Garth Ennis's run. Basically, it's like
Yeah.
pre Garth Ennis Punisher. I miss that guy.
Yeah, I mean, I always we as somebody who follows reads some military history and watches films that are historically accurate when it comes to the military aspect of things. White boots in a dark alleyway, not a good choice, but it's fun for a comic book.
I mean, one of my when speaking of like white, I love Moon Knight's line where he's like, camouflage is stupid. I want the bad guys to see me.
Yeah, yeah, but that's also Moon Knight, and the cool thing about Moon Knight and Frank Castle is that they're the ones who will slaughter without compunction. Everybody else is sort of tied to a moral code that they don't go beyond a certain point. They don't kill. They don't do that. Moon Knight, if you've read the comics, man, that man's a butcher, like hardcore butcher. The more violent it is, the more the Egyptian god is appeased. Frank just wants to take out the trash, so he'll do it as quickly as possible. But Moon Knight takes some. He definitely takes some umbrage with his victims. That's for sure.
I mean, look, man, if they can give Frank the 2099 skin, they can give him the
Mm.
classic costume. I mean, come on, man.
They
It's not.
probably will. They probably will. If you say it loud enough, I'm sure that people will hop on board and ask for it, and then it'll be there.
So I mean, have you gotten a chance to play the game yet, or have you not? Do you not play any of
I
the
haven't
stuff
been
there is?
playing it. I played it once to sort of get an idea of the map and how things work and those types of things. But again, I've been directing so much lately because doing Game of Thrones King's Road and Sakamoto Days Season 2 at the same time does not allow me a lot of town time. And rather than coming off of being highly emotional and get even more emotional with a video game, I usually decompress by watching something. So I'll watch, like, I just blew through 4.5 episodes of Squid Game on Saturday night. I was like, I just got to shut off my brain for a while. No, it was Friday night. So, it's that kind of stuff where you're just like, I want to decompress. I don't want to press buttons. When I have a couple of days off, that's when I get into my video game stuff. And so maybe I'll do that soon. Is just delve in and see how deep I can go. I'm more of a narrative video game guy. I really like being in an interactive story. Rivals is great, just like Mortal Kombat is great. You get in, you get into an arena, you do some combat, you come out, you see how well you did. Same with Call of Duty. You're entering maps, you're going in against other teams, you come in, you come out. That's great. I just don't have the attention span for that for a long period of time. It's just something for me. I really like it when I know that I'm going in the direction of a story because, again, I'm just so story oriented that I'm like, ooh, where's it going next? That's the reason why I finished The Last of Us 1 and 2. They're just brilliant stories. And so you're just like, oh, what's happening next? I got to get there. You know, and each scene, each playable scene has an emotional impact. It's not just meant for carnage. They're there to propel the story forward, and so I keep moving on that. I was playing Ghost of Tsushima, and I just had to take a break because I had to get back to working on directing. And by the time I came back, I had forgotten all of my keystrokes. And so I had to restart the game over again because I could not remember how to do certain moves. And because I couldn't remember how to do them, I was dying constantly. So
And do you watch or play any of the stuff you worked on, or can you not stand listening to yourself?
I always have judgments after I see it of, oh, I could have done that a little differently. So I don't listen to a lot of my stuff. I do watch it at least once because there's always like premieres of things. Like at Suzume, I ended up playing a bunch of different supplemental characters in Suzume, directing myself in that show. So when you see it and you hear yourself, you're like, oh, sometimes I'm like, oh, that's great, that works. But I remember I ended up playing one of the villains in Zom 100, and I got done listening to the rough cuts and I was like, I don't like the way my character's going. And I went back and personally, on my own time with the engineer, because we had some time left over, I said, do you mind if we jump back in and I re record this guy? And literally the engineer's like, yeah, that's much better. So there are times that I listen to myself and I think I'm in the right direction. But again, having a director who has a specific vision that can point you in a direction, it's hard to direct yourself until you can step away from it and listen to it separately. So I'll always have some judgments about my performance, but most of the time, I work on the next thing. It's about doing the work, not so much reviewing the work. It's about the feeling you get by doing the art rather than just reviewing the art. Sometimes I do because I want to see how it all came together at the end with the final mix. But sometimes I don't. Like by the time I got done directing Kakaguri Twin, I knew everything that was going on. I knew how it was going. I saw the rough cuts because I wanted to make sure that, they'll sometimes send me the rough cuts so I can say, hey, can we move this so that it matches flap a little bit more? Can we pop the volume on this? Can we do this? And by the time I'm done, I'm like, I'm not going to watch this on TV. I watched it both in Japanese. I watched every single line being recorded, and then I watched the cuts uh, that were meant to be, the rough cuts before we go in for final mix. And so I'm like, I've watched it 3 times. I think I'm good.
And when you're watching a show that you didn't work on, do you get critical of like, oh, if I was directing this, I would have like done it
Sometimes,
differently?
sometimes I wonder if they captured the attention intentions, and sometimes I will literally flip back and forth. I will watch the same line, literally the one line, in Japanese, and then I'll flip because you can just with a button you'll be like English, Japanese with subtitles, English, Japanese with subtitles. And sometimes I'll flip back and forth between the two, going, which one do I like better? Which performances do I feel are capturing my attention more? And literally by doing that, it'll make me choose where I want to stay for the rest of the show. So I'll stay for the rest of the show because I'll get used to hearing the Japanese, and I'll stay for the rest of the show with the Japanese. Or I find that, especially in terms of some of the people that I really admire as directors, like Mike McFarland, I stayed and never watched Chainsaw Man in anything but the English dub because his direction of those moments was brilliant, and it was so honest and it was so good. Ryan Colt Levy and Susie Young and so many good people in that.
And outside of like voiceover and directing, do you have any personal hobbies, or do you just not have the time?
Oh no, I have personal hobbies. I like to do those, do a lot of different things on the side. I'm kind of an adventurer. I like to go out and do new things. Like for example, November last year, I have a friend of mine who's a very avid skydiver. He is Puerto Rican and was the first Puerto Rican to be able to skydive over the pyramids in Giza. And so I went out, and there was a place called Paris Skydive, and it was closing. It was the final weekend. And so I came out with him, and I did a tandem skydive, and he dove out of the plane with me. And then, just like you see in the movies, he flew over and held my hands while we were falling, and then broke away. And then, we pulled our chutes, and I got a chance to grab both of the guidance cords, and the instructor that was strapped to my back was having me doing twirls and things like that. It was pretty wild. I enjoyed it very, very, very much.
And you also mentioned that you're meeting up with Josh Keaton to do archery. How did that whole thing start?
I used to do archery in Boy Scouts, and by the time I was in college, I was working at a day camp, and I actually was teaching archery to kids. And so I have loved archery my entire life, and it's something that I've done for a long, long time. So he just started getting into it and was really enjoying it, and he said, "You should come out with me." So I'm, for the first time in like a decade, gonna start pulling a bow again, and I have not had an opportunity to in a long time. So I got to reach out to him, see if that's going to happen this weekend or not, because that's just on us. But I do love firing an arrow into a target. That's for sure.
Okay, now I gotta ask, like, did you audition for Hawkeye at some point?
No, I did not. Did I audition? I have auditioned to be Hawkeye in an actual Marvel cartoon before, but I didn't get that either. My wheelhouse tends to be anime and video games. I've only been in a very few animated projects, and I don't know if that's because I'm too big or too small, or my voice isn't right, or I'm just not getting it. But voice actors sort of find where they're good, and they sort of stay in those zones. And I would really like to get deeper into animation. Josh can do both. I mean, Josh is the Amazing Spider-Man. Josh is Green Lantern. Josh is, I mean, he's worked with the best of the best back during like the good DC cartoon era, working with Andrew Romano. That man is just a machine. He's so good at what he does. And I wish I could do more of that. In fact, Josh and I did act opposite to each other once, and we didn't even know each other at the time. I am in Voltron Legendary Defender, and I play a rebel that's on an ice planet, and we capture Shiro. And so here I am being this big, boisterous, guy with tusks and ears. He's got a scar over his eye, and I say we eat him. Does that mean we can't eat him? And literally, it's Josh opposite me, and this is 5 years before we ever met. So it's really fun that we got a chance to do that.
Did you ever bring that up in conversations? Like, hey,
Oh
you
yeah,
you don't you
yeah,
don't
yeah,
know me,
yeah.
but we worked
And
on
in
this
fact,
thing.
just recently we were working on a video game together, and he was the lead-in, and I'm like, Josh, we're acting together again, even though I'm like in a booth and he's already at home for some other thing. And so I texted him, look, it's us, and he's like, ah. So Josh is a great dude. I love
Yeah.
him to death.
I mean, Spider-Man, Green Lantern, Norman Osborn, like he can do it all, basically.
No, he is a force of nature in this business, and I'm super happy for him. I mean, he's had his on-camera stuff, but I'm so delighted with his voiceover world. It's brilliant and big and beautiful.
And seeing as like conventions are starting to be a big thing now, is that something you ever wanted to consider dipping your toe in, or is it not? Does
You
not?
know, um, I love conventions for people, and I love conventions for people being able to meet the people that they admire and have fans of, and those types of things. For me, I'm bashful. I know it sounds weird, but I do enjoy meeting fans. But there's a certain aspect in me. I don't know if it's humble or if it's self-deprecating, but like people coming up to me and being like, "You're the greatest." I'm like, "Oh my god, that's so much." And then they're like, "Can we pay you for your autograph?" And I'm like, "Oh my god, they want to give me money for me signing a scribble." It's a lot for me emotionally, so I haven't found myself doing it. I have done one signing in my entire life. It was for Unicorn Overlord because they invited the entire cast out, and I'm like, well, I'll be surrounded by all these people and stuff like that. And it was interesting, but it gives me a little anxiety, just to be honest. I'm kind of it doesn't seem like I would be a shy person. I am very outgoing and gregarious, and I love meeting people and stuff like that. But there's something about the interaction of like, we're gonna pay you to sign things and do things, and I'm like, that's a lot. Wow, I don't know why I haven't come to a certain understanding or acceptance of that, but it's not something that I've done. I have friends of mine who've been able to buy their houses because of, interacting with fans, and they find that to be glorious, and they spend so many weekends throughout the year at different conventions all over the world. And I just, for some reason, it's not been something that I think I value two things. One, my personal time on my weekends, and two, I like people knowing me a certain amount, but not so much that I get pigeonholed where they can't see me as anything else. You know what I mean? So, like, being an actor with less of a public eye means that I can throw myself into something and people will just accept that instead of going, oh, but that's Bill and I don't think that'll work. And, that kind of thing, because they've identified my persona as being something that has to be a part of every acting thing that I do. Um, Maybe I'm thinking too much into it. Maybe I'm thinking too much into it, but I haven't done the convention thing yet.
Because they do a lot of like because they do a lot of Marvel Rivals like get-togethers, and they do like they bring out like a bunch of the cast to do signings at conventions or
Yeah, I've heard
whatever.
of those, and I've seen some friends who do that. They're really good at it. They're just really good at it. And I probably could get good at it if I actually just put away the anxiety and stepped out of my little booth shell that I'm in right now. But at the moment, just not yet. Just not yet. I'm not saying never. I'm just not yet. I just gotta get over myself. I think we all have little aspects of ourselves that we gotta get over, and this is one of mine.
Yeah, man, tell me about it. Like, whenever I talk to someone who I grew up watching as a kid, I'm like, but you did this thing, and like, what are you doing talking to me? And it doesn't feel real to me. And this is not me bragging, but I'm good friends with Corey Burton, and I've grown up with his work, and it
Mm-hmm.
feels it
Mm-hmm.
feels surreal to me that I text with him like nearly like almost
Yeah,
every day,
because
and it's
these are
like,
people that, well, yeah, like Johnny Young Bosch is freaking Kaneda in Akira. And here I am directing him in a video game, and he's the most laid back dude ever. And he's just like, okay, okay, all right. And then he opens his mouth, and it's like, I mean, it's huge. And I'm like, I'm working with Johnny Young Bosch. I'm working with fucking Kaneda. Holy shit. And then I'm working with Cam Clark, who's just the most gracious man, hugging me. Oh, I've missed you. You're such a great guy. He's just this beautiful, wonderful, paternal, yummy figure. And he's freaking Tetsuo. I mean, it's like these are the people that I've worked with, and I'm just like, this is surreal. It's very, very surreal. Very surreal. But it's also beautiful because you drop all of that and you just get to be people with them. And that's just a beautiful thing because then you just strip all that away and you click with some people and you don't with others. It's just like Josh and I clicked and I was like, we're each other's people. That's awesome. Um yeah, I just it's a head trip to know that I started by watching this stuff and now I'm making a living directing some of it. That's that it's hard for me to wrap my brain around that sometimes.
last thing I wanted to ask, like, seeing as you work on a lot of anime, what was the most challenging project you had to work on to adapt to an English for an English speaking audience?
Tokyo 24th Ward. So, Tokyo 24th Ward, it started out solid and then for some reason some of the people that were working on it that were adapting on it stopped trying to match Flap. And to me, I'm such a purist about it that I started rewriting on the fly. And by the time we got to half season, I was rewriting on the fly, like a lot of the scripts. So much so that for episodes 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, I either got co writing, co adapting credit, or solo adapting credit. So I want you to imagine that I get it. And while I'm in the booth directing the actor, I'm rewriting the lines on the fly to make sure that they match. On top of that, we have the emotional stuff going on in the storyline. And the storyline is about three close friends. There was one girl who was the sister of one, who was the love interest of another. Um, she ends up, prior to the start of the story, dying in a horrific fire. At least that's what we thought. Okay. And then these three boys get this call from somebody who's supposed to be dead, sounding analytical. And when they're talking to her on the phone, through the phone downloaded into their brains, they become superpowered. And they have to go and thwart bad things that are happening in the future. She can future cast and see what potential outcomes there are, and if they have options to either choose to save these people or not. And every time the phone call comes, they're like, who is this girl? So it's a meditation on the loss of somebody. And right in the middle of the show is when Billy Kometz got his diagnosis, and then we lost him. And we had to continue the show. And we had to continue the show without Billy, with Alejandro, one of his close friends, playing his role. And then by the ending of the show, it becomes this meditation on saying goodbye to the people that we've lost. Emotionally brutal to do that surrounding that event, as well as adapting it on the fly to rewrite it in a moment's notice with the actors in the room. Very heavy, very proud of it. Go watch it.
I can imagine. Man, that must have
That was
sucked.
the toughest.
Yeah.
It was difficult, but it was also honoring who Billy was. Even Alejandro was like, I'm just trying to do Billy right. I'm just trying to honor what he does. And Alejandro, in his own part, is, of course, an incredible talent, just a brilliant dude. But having him mimic Billy's voice and literally having people go, God, that sounds like Billy. And having Alejandro be just like heavy, 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 because Billy was a close friend of his, walking out of the booth, just be, it was just emotionally draining and brilliant and beautiful, and all of the flavors of emotion that you could possibly have were put into that show.
Okay, seeing as that's
One
too much.
season and done.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
one season and done.
yeah. Seeing as
The
that's too
entire
much.
story is done in that. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
As okay, seeing as that's too much of a downer to end this episode on, I want to end it on a lighter note.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there any funny booth stories? Like, was there something? Was there anything like something really funny happened in the booth?
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Suzume working with Nicole Sakura. She played Suzume in it. And we had to toe the line of what swear words we could use because it's still a kid's film. So she's running towards the boat, and you have this young lady, oh, crap! I mean, just these moments where we're supposed to do the. I was working on Odd Taxi with Patrick Seitz as well, and we dropped an F bomb in the middle of it thinking that it was going to work. Both he and Alex Lee dropped F bombs because Odd Taxi is completely different than any other anime out there. It's more of a Coen Brothers mystery than anything else. It's a murder mystery, and there's bank heists and all this other stuff. And there was a time when Patrick Seitz, he's off camera and he's like, well, they're gonna bring that gun, and he used the F bomb. Well, they fucking better, and we just thought it was perfect. But then when they heard it back, they're like, yeah, we're gonna take it out, and we had to change it to frickin' and freaking and all this other stuff. Because even Alex Lee, when he's plays this guy who literally snaps because he got addicted to a gotcha game and ends up having the whole game lose exactly what he was searching for his entire time that he was there on a moment's notice. And he decides to go off on a tangent and finds the gun that this character is supposed to have. Again, it's very much like a Coen Brothers mystery, but there comes a time at the end where he's just like, and we're just like, oh, it's so good, but we can't.
That's so weird. It's like, oh yeah, we're working on an adult show, but you can't swear because I don't know, that pisses off the client for some reason.
Well, it's just a matter of marketing. You got to be able to market it a certain way, and you got to make sure that it's palatable for all audiences because F bombs bring it into PG territory. So, Even if it's adult content, anime still falls under certain circumstances. They'll say it's mature, but they won't like R rate or PG rate it. They'll just say for mature adults, like a video game. So you have to make sure that you toe the line.
Oh, and also like Odd Taxi, Mike McFarland was the lead in that, so there you go. You got to
That
work with
was
him
his
on that.
first lead role after decades of working anime. That was Mike's first lead role. He adapted all the scripts. And it was my first solo show where I was the director of the entire show. And he and I dug deep into that. I mean, there were some heartbreaking moments in that literally Mike was like, "Can we take 10 minutes, please?" Because he got really emotional on certain things. But it was a blast to do that with him. When we were done, we were so delighted with it. So delighted with it. That was our favorite anime. Even the casting director was like, Odd Taxi. Favorite anime that year. So good.
I will say this, one of my favorite people who worked on that show, and I had him on the show years ago when he was first starting, was Darius Johnson, and I think he is a phenomenally talented actor and very underrated, and I wish he would get more work. Seriously.
Darius
Yeah.
had the hardest job. Mike also had a hard job with this too. Darius plays Yano, and Yano is a character that raps all of his lines. He is a gangster that literally every time he speaks, you'll hear a beat pick up, and everything is done to a rhythm and to a rap, including the fact that one of the people who raps over the original song in the very beginning is the guy character of Yano, and he was rapping it. So not only do you have flaps that are rapping, we have to adapt that rap into the English language so it works not only for the content and what the meaning is, but according to the rhythms of the flaps. And this was during the pandemic. So here we are making sure, because we try to do it at home and there's a quarter-second delay when it comes to internet connections when you're recording and doing things. So we came in and I was at the back of the room with my computer while the engineer's in the front of the room. There's 20 feet between us. We've got a HEPA filter inside. We're all wearing masks, and Darius is inside the booth, inside a encased glass, and we're just trying to match rhythms and trying to bring the performance forward. And he got nominated for that for best actor that year from the W Awards. So I'm proud of him for that. He stepped up hard for that character.
And before I wrap this up, can you give us an update on what you're currently working on and where can people find you online?
You can find me online on Instagram. Instagram, it's audio, the letter U, the number four, IA. So it actually says Audio Euphoria. And it's Bill Millsap on Instagram. That's the best place to find me. What I'm working on right now, we're still expanding Game of Thrones King's Road. Game of Thrones King's Road is interesting, and some people are complaining about it for one reason. Uh, it's a mobile game. It is the size of Diablo 4. It is full open world, like Horizon Zero Dawn or God of War or any of these things, and yet you play it on your phone because it was created by a Korean company with licensing from HBO and Warner Brothers, where they're signing off on all of the scripts so that they are canon to the actual show of Game of Thrones. But in South Korea, they don't have platforms. They don't have Xbox or Nintendo or PlayStation. So everything is either on your computer or on your phone. So you get to play something as large as literally Diablo 4 on your phone. And because of that, it's constantly expanding the storylines. And the storylines, hundreds, I kid you not, hundreds of hours of playtime. And it's not just, oh, we need to go out and do this little task, each moment, each subquest, each bounty hunt has its own storyline and moral choices, A to B. That it's really, really well written. So I'm still working on Game of Thrones King's Road, even though it was released 2 months ago, because it's constantly expanding throughout, this whole universe of Westeros. So that updates are constantly being done, so that when you log back into your phone, you thought you might have been done, but nope, here's more, and it just keeps going and going and going. And then I'm working on Sakamoto Days season 2. The first 4 episodes have been directed. I'm working on episode 5 right now. those will be released, I believe, in 2 weeks. You're going to get the first few episodes, possibly more than that. So the release date for Sakamoto season 2 on Netflix should be coming fairly shortly, and it's a good season. It's a very, very good season. The person who adapted season 1 and directed season 1 adapted season 2. He just got pulled onto another directing project before they had announced season 2, and so they're like, "Bill, are you available?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I think I can fit this into the Game of Thrones King's Road schedule." So I'm doing both at the same time.
And thank you so much for taking the time off to do this. This has been a lovely conversation. And if you ever want to come back, you know where to find me.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for listening, and thank you for having me, man.
All right, take care. Bye bye.
Bye.